Risk management. We do see that a lot nowadays in the employment adverts, particularly in Bermuda. But what does it all mean? Well, today we're going to find out from a very experienced risk professional exactly what this is, and more importantly, what are the Bermuda employment opportunities. I'm Stephanie Brown, and I'm a recruiter currently based in Bermuda. And I'm about to share my screen with Andrew Vaucrosson. Thank you so much for joining me today, Andrew.
Hi, Steph. Thanks for sharing your screen with me.
You're so welcome. Now, I'm super excited to talk to you because I know you've done this for a long time. So I think who better than you to tell us what this is all about? So let's go straight to it then, Andrew. And if you can give us sort of an overview of what actually is risk management as a function.
Well, risk manager, one of the things about being in this profession is you learn how to identify, assess, and control threats to an organization's capitals and earnings. And the threats can come in all different forms. You can have financial or market uncertainty. A lot of times, when it comes to market uncertainty, you're dealing with credit risk. You're dealing with volatility that exists in various markets. You may also deal with accounting changes that exist when it comes to dealing with the assets. You have legal and regulatory liabilities, which I think most people are aware of in today's environment. You have strategic management or personal errors that can actually sort of deal with cyber risks. It could also deal with something to do with the lack of competitive edge that you might become too comfortable in your current market and rely on status quo. It could be accidents that threaten your business, or it can be natural disasters, which I think most people from Bermuda understands what natural disaster because of our hurricane exposure.
Wow, so it seems it can be a lot of different things then that threaten businesses. And I feel like this is a job category on the island that we've seen more and more people move into over the years. I've seen things to do with AML and sort of KYC and things pop up. So have you seen that change as well, Andrew?
Oh, definitely. And I think it has been driven by the regulatory authority, the BMA, in Bermuda, where they were requiring to have a separate entity in the organization that's responsible for risk matters. Some of the things you just talked about was compliance. Obviously, there's layers of compliance as well as other risk requirements that come through the regulator. What's important is that is solidifying businesses when it comes to first line defense and the third line defense. The risk management sits in the middle. So that's the second line of defense. And I think there's a growing requirement for these organizations to have that independent person involved in their organization.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely seen it as well. Um, so in terms of if someone's thinking of getting into this kind of profession, are there any specific qualifications that you'd recommend they look into?
Yeah, there's actually two schools that I personally have subscribed to myself in order to get my qualifications to the par that I needed. One was the Associated Risk Management, which is based out of the US. And I strongly recommend those entities that are involved in the US market to sort of pursue that. It's a 3-year course. It requires dedication and there's extensive testing that's involved. And then there's the Institute of Risk Management out of the UK, and they're more known for the courses that are really applied to the European model, because obviously there's two different accounting elements, and there's obviously some regulatory differences between the two markets.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fantastic to know. So, before you kind of took these designations and started down this path, what kind of degree did you end up, what did you start with, Andrew?
Well, I was starting primarily to become a lawyer. So I studied English and philosophy and political science. I ended up taking some time off from that. I got accepted at law school, and then when I came back after half of a year, I ended up getting into life insurance and annuity business with a insurance company who was servicing or selling products into the U.S., Bermuda, and Hong Kong. And then from there, I never looked back.
Wow. So, it sounds like obviously you going to do the law thing, then you kind of got into insurance as such, but how did the risk function kind of come about?
Yeah, I was on the front end side of things. I was mostly developing new business. And what happened is when 9/11 came, I was working for a very large global organization that was heavily impacted by the losses occurred from 9/11. And as a result of that, they had to uh, get out of some of the non-core business, which I was involved in. And then what happened was there was a big effort to look at some of the investment risk that they were exposed to. And I joined some teams that were building risk control models around financial risk and investment risk. And that's then forced me to kind of elevate my experience as well as my skill set. So that's when I started pursuing the ARM.
Wow, okay. So, I mean, that was obviously a horrible time as such, but the timing for you exposed you to something you maybe not thought of doing before.
No, and then it opened my eyes to the opportunity. And then in the early stages, I was involved with even Bermuda when it started to change its rules, and was very much in the early stages of the white papers for CISA and the FRC and all the other sort of requirements that we currently abide by right now.
Wow, awesome. Awesome. So I guess another question I'd like to ask is, you've done this for a long time, you seem to know your stuff, but what do you really enjoy about it? Why do you love being in risk management?
Well, there's three things that I really enjoy about it. The first thing I think is really learning about the business processes that I learned from the individuals, the subject matter experts who are in the front line of the business. And what I like about the learning is that I can turn this around and show to them where their risk exposures are and help to educate them on the ways in which they can mitigate it. And that ultimately, I think, helps create a risk culture that the organization can sort of rely on, especially in the senior management teams. The second part of it that I think, because of the years of experience I've had, I've managed to see how a good risk management framework or good risk management planning has helped the company avoid some of those threats that we talked about earlier and help to reduce the impact they may have had on capital and earnings. And I think that's a really good thing because both those experiences help to provide some value to what you think you can bring to the table. And then the third thing that I find interesting and I enjoy is the looking into the future, trying to anticipate how things are going to evolve. Like on the cyber risk front, one of the things that I was very much involved in, and this was like 5 years ago, was starting to look at cyber hygiene of individuals and how do we come up with means of determining whether we've implemented a successful initiative with staff when it comes to dealing with this particular exposure. And those sorts of things, those three things really have made the role exciting for me. And it's intrigued me and kept me very much interested in this space.
Yeah, I can definitely tell that's genuine from how you're explaining there. So I guess the final question then is if someone's thinking of moving into risk management as a profession, what kind of sort of skills do you think that they should have really to do well?
That's a great question because one of the things when I was working for this global company, I had to recruit a lot of people within these COEs, these centers of excellence. And what I looked for in particular were people that were analytical, people who had the ability to read and understand and then convey their understanding, and people who were willing to challenge, in some instances, the status quo. A lot of times the person has to have the skill set to be able to listen and to digest what's going on, in some cases document it. I find the ability to do workflow analysis is very key. Um, and then I think the integrity factor is a very key factor. Integrity meaning that you really have to look at what's the interest of the company at heart, the enterprise. And that's constantly you're looking at that because in many instances, you have to be that sounding board for the board or the sounding board for the C-suite team when it comes to matters. And you've got to be able to be honest about your observations and the things you think that needs to be done.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been absolutely invaluable speaking with you today, and hopefully people that are watching have learnt more and they choose to move into risk management. It definitely seems an area that is not going anywhere on the island and could be a positive place to be.
My pleasure, Steph. And I really think what you're doing right now is really helpful to the community. And it's a great thing that you're doing this right now.
Oh, thank you so much. So, if you've enjoyed listening to Andrew today talk about risk management, then please do go ahead and share within your networks, and hopefully, together, we'll help raise the awareness of the Bermuda employment opportunities. Thank you.